Hi there, welcome to the Colson Boutique Show. Joining me today via Putney Bridge to collect a 66 Chateau Latour Jeroboam. It's none other than Mark Roberts, head of Dreweatts Wine Department. Mark, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Very well. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're more than welcome. So let's get to it. How did your passion for wine begin?
How did it begin? I think it's always quite hard to admit this, actually. I can still remember my father being given 2 bottles when I was pretty young. I must have been 10 or something.
Okay.
And it was a Lafite and a Talbot. And I remember him letting us try them. And I know it's terrible to say, it's like sort of admitting, but I remember liking, it sounds quite pretentious as well, but I remember liking the Lafite more than the Talbot. I still remember it. I also remember sort of being dragged around France as a child, in the back of the car, and we used to drink quite a lot of Montbazillac. Well, my father and mother, actually mum didn't, she doesn't really drink, but she didn't drink, but and it was just sort of piqued an interest there. And, I started working, after university, I started working for Justerini Brooks, which was a great place to learn the trade.
Oh, massively.
And it just opened up so many opportunities that you wouldn't have in smaller merchants. And it was before the time of, joining... It was before the time where people were talking about wet wine investment and all those things. It really was just all about wine. And all the directors' lunches upstairs. And so we got to try the most fabulous wines. I think our managing director at the time, to go back to Latour, I think I can't remember what vintage it was. That's how bad it was. That's how much we drank. But he had, I think actually it was 76 Latour. And what he liked to do is he'd have a number of lunches over a period of weeks, and he would get quite sort of stuck into a few cases. And there was always quite a lot left over. So we just had the opportunity then to drink things that no one aged 20, 21 would nowadays joining the trade would ever have there.
Or can even afford.
It was quite, or can you afford.
Yeah.
So it was quite hard to sort of break away if I wanted to do something else. But it was a great company to sort of cut your teeth in.
They're a major company. St. James's?
They're on St. James's Street, yeah. I don't know what it's like now. I have friends still there, but everyone does different things. I think they're still pretty good, I think so.
Yeah. I think so. But all right, so more focused on Dreweatts. They've built a great reputation auctioning from coins to arts, antiques, etc. Do you find that you have a large crossover of buyers? Or do most people buy wines, or who are buying wines rather, tend to know what they're looking for?
We don't have a huge crossover of buyers between us and the other departments. We're trying to look at more. It's there's things like watches and things like that. I've always felt there's more synergy. They're sort of collectors. You could almost call luxury goods. Certainly for the vendors, yes, there's a crossover. People have selling big houses, and there's always a seller under the furniture, so to speak.
Yes.
But buyers, no, the buyers tend to be focused on wine and wine alone. Okay. But that's not to say we always should be doing more to encourage people. Someone always used to tell me that with Christie's that. The wine department's always been very successful there, but when Christie's started to really slim down and just have impressionists, old masters, and jewelry, and not all the sort of smaller art departments, that they kept wine at King Street because it always used to bring in new buyers for other departments. It was a good hook.
Yes.
Yeah. So and particularly for the Asian market as well. It was always a nice thing to draw people in.
But I think that was something that was also like a Selfridge's philosophy. He would always, and even today, when you go to Marble Arch, go to Oxford Street, one thing that they're big on is the window display, because it helps just lure people in.
Yeah,
and wine has that exoticism about it where people just go, what? That looks beautiful. Whether it's the label, the large bottle formats, how they're presented, the lighting, naturally it does bring people in.
Yeah.
Definitely, So, all right. And you've been involved in the wine industry for over about 20 years now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that on my way up, actually. I was asked that question. And I was thinking, it is about 20 years. I mean, my first en primeur vintage was the 2000. My real sort of one that I got involved with.
That's not a bad vintage to start off with, is it?
So, because I was just thinking how it's sort of anticipating what I might be asked about things, and I was just thinking, when you look back at those en primeur vintages, you can sort of track your career on en primeurs. I don't do it these days, but thank God, actually.
Oh, it's quite market. Yeah, most definitely. But the 2000 was special.
Yeah,
very special.
Yeah, it was a game changer, I think. In terms of, it was when people really started to look at wine, certainly as an investment, but as something a little bit more than just boxes of grape juice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So obviously from when you started off, we know you've arrived at Dreweatts now, but you touched upon it, you started off at Justerini. What has been your journey in between Justerini and Dreweatts up until now?
Very much sort of based, sort of private clients. So I spent a long time with Justerini's. I looked after before they had an office in Hong Kong. I looked after the Hong Kong and Japanese business, and then we had another couple of guys who worked after the Singapore business. That was when Hong Kong was very different wine market to it is now. When I was there, going out there and traveling, it was 80% tax, and I never got the luxury of working out there when it went down to 40, and then
completely abolished.
Yeah,
completely.
And I mean, it was interesting when I had a big client there who was the financial secretary. Who had an extraordinary collection of wine, and I said, "What are we going to do about this 80% tax?" And he said, "Well, while I'm in charge, I can't bring the tax down because it's going to look
suspicious."
Very suspicious. I think later on, actually, he got done something to do with his home, sort of building an extension or something, which they're very strict on. But he was a charming man, and that was so I spent a lot of time working on those clients. I then did. When I say I took a break, I just needed a change. Actually, I needed. I was sort of getting slightly bored of London, and I had an opportunity to go and work for Emirates Airlines, doing their drinks over there, looking after their export side. Within the regions, so the dry countries, diplomatic missions, the islands, the Maldives and those sort of places, and Zanzibar and those sort of areas, and hotel groups. And I was there for a year. It wasn't actually how I envisaged it would be. It was out of my comfort zone. I enjoyed it, but it was a very different environment, and I sort of took the decision that, I either stay and not come back for a long time and really stick it out, or I had the opportunity to come back and work for Goedhuis and Company.
Yes.
Who a very similar setup to Justerini Brooks, quite a lot of sort of refugees from Justerini Brooks in terms of staff. I knew them well, and it was the right move. And so I was doing very much, but it was sort of much more on the broking side than straight private clients. Yes. It was a great company actually. So that was that. And then a few years ago, I took the plunge to start my own business. I had to say I was sick of the commute, and And then luckily, so I started my own business, which was great. And then actually this opportunity with Dreweatts came up to work in tandem with it, and completely separate. I keep them, I don't buy anything. If a client comes to me through Dreweatts, I'll never think, oh, that could do for my company. It's a clean break down the middle. So I still do private clients, yet I have the auction side on the...
It's true. Southeast Asia, they changed the market in quite a major way. I remember our director was going over to Hong Kong as an example, and at the time there were collectors who just wanted to have £10,000 bottle at the time of the main Della Romani Conti, and he wanted it placed above his fireplace. And I said, well, why do you want it there? If you keep it there and you're going to put the fire on, it's going to ruin it. I don't care. It shows who I am. It shows what I'm about, who I know. I've got access to stuff that my other, colleagues or, business rivals or whatever don't have access to. And I remember seeing this one article on China Daily USA, which was show me your Ferrari and I'll show you my wine cellar. And again, just so much wealth was just being, made. The people were making these private wine cellars and spending $1 million, $2 million US, and then just filling it up with a lot of fine wine. So, and it still seems to be that way. Tastes do seem to have changed, which kind of leads on to the next question. Like, so obviously for ourselves, we've seen that the wine market has evolved considerably. And in the time in which you've been involved, again, what changes have you seen in terms of taste? Like, because again, market used to be Bordeaux, almost to a large degree. Have you seen much difference from beyond Bordeaux, or would you say it's still...
Bordeaux's still king.
Definitely.
Bordeaux reigns supreme, and I think always will. It's going to take...
100%.
I don't think anything can knock it off its
Nothing.
perch.
Nothing.
There's the only pretender to its throne, but it's such a small region comparison, are the Tuscan wines, and they are trying to emulate Bordeaux anyway. So, the Super Tuscans, not that's unfair on Tuscany as a whole to generalise like that. But the Bordeaux blends, and the only people that I think can. And they just don't have the production to, and that's the thing with Bordeaux, is it has the production.
It does.
And when you're looking at certainly at the top end, and when you're looking at a first growth and the volume now, what is it now? 10,000 cases. 10, in a normal vintage these days. 10, it used to be 20, 30. Yeah. I think 82 Lafite and Latour made 35,000 cases. Right. But still 10,000 cases is a lot of wine, at that price point, whereas a Californian equivalent would be 500 cases, 1,000 cases.
Exactly.
So Bordeaux will always remain king because it has that critical mass. And I think, with... that's one of the reasons why, not just because Bordeaux is Bordeaux, but when it first took off in Asia, having that volume on the market allowed people to buy it, which is why Burgundy didn't take off so quickly. When people were coming into the wine market, if there were only 30 cases available of something you didn't really know much about, but you knew the label was instantly recognisable, and the reputation was there, much easier to go into that. But obviously, since we've seen Burgundy prices
skyrocket,
go insane, I think in a lot
house prices, some instances.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a Magnum of 85 Richebourg by Jair in the next auction. And I saw one had sold at Sotheby's last week or week before last. Admittedly, it was originally from Jair's original cellar that was sold in 2012 or something. So the provenance was fantastic.
Yes.
And that sold in Asia when you talk about house prices, for £138,000.
It's amazing.
That is house prices.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So the prices have gone But, as you were saying before about the man with the thing on his mantelpiece saying, this is what I've got. If you buy a bottle of wine for £135,000, I mean, they're not all like that, obviously. and you're an important client of mine. I can tell you exactly how much you're worth to me.
Sure.
With a bottle of wine.
Definitely.
In a subtle way.
Absolutely.
And in a sort of classy way as well.
Of course. Yeah. Of course. There's nothing brash about it.
Nothing brash about it. No. So, there are... Yeah, I mean, there are some prices of Burgundy. I think things like a lot of Premier Crus now, I think they're expensive for what they are. But my mind is still sort of 10 years ago, wine prices wise, with Burgundy, where a good Bourgogne should be 12 quid, not 20 quid.
No, absolutely.
Anyway, but in terms of, I mean, wherever I've seen the changes, there's so many changes. But Bordeaux is king. Still reigns.
Without question. Okay, brilliant. Now, you may not want to answer this, and that's fair enough, but I'll ask it anyway. It was reported by the likes of Bloomberg, South China Morning Post, and other major financial outlets. The firm used to represent Emirates invested $500 million into their fine wine initiative.
They're all about it.
They're all about it, for sure. And
2005 was there when they first went with a blank check.
Wow. Because they go
2005 vintage.
Right. That's not a bad vintage to start off with either. But what... Is their strategy purely, what is the best thing we can serve on the plane? Or is it also, we can see that wine does have a decent appreciation year on year, if you get, of course, the right price, brand representation, etc., etc. In your opinion, again, if you don't want to comment, you don't need to. Are they looking at it from a purely consumption standpoint, or do you think that they're also looking at 100 million has appreciated 30-40%? Let's sell some of that on. Maybe balance the books where the losses were made through, say, COVID-19 or whatever. But let's also use some of that money to replenish our cellars.
I can't comment on what they were doing now. When I was there, and the reason why they bought the 05 vintage was consumption. The only way to really sell it was on aeroplanes, to get rid of it. I mean, the volumes were extraordinary, I have to say. I looked at the spreadsheet numerous times and valued it, some of it. I think there was always, there was always an idea that if it could make money, I think, why not? But the volumes were, they were mind-blowing. They went to 05. They must have bought a little bit before here and there, but they came into Bordeaux for the 2005 vintage, sort of like when Aladdin riding through the town. I mean, they really with their checkbooks open but most I think it really was it was to drink on the aeroplanes. They saw the market there. They were obviously increasing. 05 was still relatively young for Emirates then. Emirates didn't. I don't know how big it is in terms of planes flying these days compared to them. But I remember once I was sort of tasked to go out. They didn't have things like Petrus or anything like that on their books. They couldn't, even however big a checkbook, they still couldn't break into that territory. That sort of territory.
Sure.
They had a lot of first growth and a lot of second growth and things. But it was an impressive. But I was tasked once on their inaugural flight from Emirates from Dubai to New York, non-stop, and they wanted to serve 82 Petrus in first class. That was their, this is, what's the best wine, Mark? Well, if you really want to make a splash, so to speak, 82 Petrus, go for 82 Petrus. So they didn't have any Petrus in the cellars there, so we bought it from the UK. But every time I bought a case, the price went up by 20%. I think I can't remember the exact figures, but the 3 cases we bought,
Petrus is better 82, yeah.
It started, I can't remember what it was. I mean, it probably looks cheap now. But so they did buy, but that's the sort, they weren't serving Petrus 82 on every flight. But, you'll certainly be getting on first class, you'll get a lot of Grand Prix Lacoste, you get a lot of, I don't know, Lynch Barge was famous for Cathay Pacific, wasn't it? Lynch Barge got its name because it was always served in, it got its name in Asia.
Right,
and they like it because it was always served in Cathay first class.
Right.
It was quite a smart sort of move.
Yeah, it is.
But, you would be drinking up to second growth quality in
Code
first
class.
Yeah. I'm not sure of first growth in first class. The first growth they had may have been earmarked for.
Just a little quick sidetrack. I mean, do wines taste? Because again, it's a common question that gets asked to me when I mention this to clients. But do wines taste differently on a plane when they're compared to?
No idea. People say they do.
Yeah.
People say they do, but I don't know. I think it's. Yeah, perhaps they do. I'm not sure.
I think when we can start flying out to France, we should take first class and maybe
find out.
We'll find out. There are worse ways.
There's an easy way to find that out.
Exactly.
I think a lot of it's probably that you probably get served it in tiny little glasses.
Yeah, exactly, half bottles or
I bet there's probably an argument that it does. It's not something I have heard it, but it's not something I sort of dug into.
So one thing to tick off the list for the future.
We will do it together.
Definitely. All right, so let's fast forward to you joining Dreweatts.
Yeah.
You did touch upon it. So you started your business before you decided to obviously have this opportunity to work with Dreweatts. But how did that opportunity come about?
It came about purely because a client of mine, Dreweatts, was going through quite a lot of changes. They'd just been bought by a company called Goedhuis, and I think there were big staff shake-ups, and I think the business was changing. And they didn't have a wine specialist, and I think at that stage, he had left. I don't know where he'd gone. And my client phoned up to enter some wine into Dreweatts, and they came back and said, well, we don't really know what's going on with the wine department at the moment. So he said, why don't you just give them a ring and see if there's anything. And, when we're in business, can be up and down, and school fees and things were looming. Sure. And I thought, you know what, nice bit of extra income if I can do it. And I had actually long before Justerini's, just straight after university, just looking for around what I wanted to do. I did work for Christie's for a bit just to help out.
Lovely.
So I knew, and I liked the auction world, and I knew it a bit. And I thought, well, do you know what? I called them up and I said, I understand you need a bit of help at the moment sorting out sort of the mess that was left behind in the wine department.
Sure. And
I didn't put it like that. And they said, yeah, fine. I mean, it was the easiest, quickest interview I've ever had in my life. And so I got there, and Diane, who I work with, is just absolutely fantastic. And I think we just looked at it, what had happened over the last few years, and we got this so much potential here. Sure. And with the support of Goedhuis, and they said, so much potential here, but we just need to sort out this mess. So and I didn't even know if I was just going to stay 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever, turned into whatever it is, 3 years. And it just sort of reminded me how much I like the auction world.
Yes.
And I liked sorting out something that needed sorting out. That's what gave real enjoyment. So we've sort of hopefully turned it round into a proper wine department within.
A couple of questions down the line, and we're going to get onto that, and I think that's going to be a reflection of, again, a lot of the hard work you've been putting in.
Yeah.
But before we get into that point, obviously you mentioned you love the auction room. It is a magical place, and it can be a very high energy, ambitious environment. What is it you enjoy about conducting auctions?
I don't know, actually. I've never conducted any other auction apart from a wine auction. I quite like there's something about being in control of. I don't know. I've never thought about it. I enjoy it.
Sure.
I think it's a real honour to be up there. I think it's a nice. It's a great opportunity to be given to do. It's a nice skill to have. You can teach yourself. It's good for listening. It's good for your maths.
Yes.
Working out all the numbers, which is
helps.
always good for me. And I think it's sort of theatre.
Massively.
It's good fun.
And the clients love it as well, don't they?
Yeah.
Because if they're going to spend that kind of money, they want to feel slightly entertained. Absolutely.
And entertained.
Absolutely. Because you cannot be afraid of dealing with large figures from these people, because like you said, it's that confidence that gives them the confidence to want to know that they're buying from the right person and the right firm.
Yeah.
So I imagine you've definitely been a part of some of these famous bidding wars that we're all accustomed to. I say we, but people within the industry are accustomed to. How can you sense when there's going to be a bidding war? Is it when it's a certain clientele that is a big spender, or there could be like a friendly rivalry between certain clientele? Is it when you know that there is a certain wine or wines which has been on the waiting list where clients said to you, right, Mark, we're after Cheval Blanc 2000 or Lafleur 1982, but you've got several other bidders interested, and they're going to be there on that day. Can you sense it from that moment onwards, or is it really when?
I think you say it's from the book. When you see on the book, on the bids, on the books. Obviously this year there's been no auctions in the room. Everything has been. Although we can hold an online auction, a live auction like this, it's all been via the internet and commission bids. For the sort of top end wines, the real. The bidding war does take place on the book and online, and the room bidding, certainly at Dreweatts, tends to be much more for drinking wines, i.e., good Bordeaux, good Burgundies, those sort of things.
Sure.
I've never experienced being in a room taking an auction where you've got two people trying to go out of the way. I mean, I've been in auctions when that has happened, but never held one myself.
Fair enough.
But I think there is always that. Certainly, that case of two people who know each other. There can be that element of it.
Definitely.
And certainly, sort of when you do evening auctions, when there's a little bit of drink flowing, that's where it happens.
That's when the magic
but
really
at 11 o'clock in the morning in Newbury.
That's a bit more gentleman-like, isn't it? Definitely.
Yeah, there's none of that.
All right.
But I'd love to be a part of it one day once we get back to normal, and we're going to, we've got many plans when it comes to our auctions, the wine auctions. So over the next couple of years. So hopefully we'll be doing more of those sort of evening things that perhaps we can.
Definitely.
People's.
All right, so only last month then, Dreweatts, I don't know how you guys managed to, or who you know, but you were able to acquire a bottle of Screaming Eagle 1992. I believe from my notes here, I know it's the first vintage ever made, but it was one of three bottles available on the global market. How did you manage to get that? Number one, but also what was the sale like for that?
Well, the actual sale it was in was fantastic. That bottle there, they are tricky to sell, Screaming Eagles. They have their price. They're the sort of things that you might see in hedonism.
Yes.
I think they've got a magnum of the same wine for 40,000 quid. Sort of thing that you will see on a shelf there for crazy money. To me, I think we valued it at sort of £7,000, £8,000, £9,000 for that bottle. I always believe with those things, you have to aim for the stars for the first time, and you might get lucky. We didn't sell it that auction, actually. Sadly, we had a bottle of white which sold for 2,500 of white
Sauvignon
screaming
Blanc?
Sauvignon
Yeah.
Blanc. Yeah, that's the 2013, which was their first vintage of Sauvignon Blanc. They make one barrel of the stuff, so it's rare.
rare.
So it's rare. So it's almost £2,500 a bottle of the Sauvignon. But I did want to sort of aim for the stars with the red. It's going into our next auction actually at a bit less, sort of 4 to 5,
Sure.
which I think was probably the right price.
Sure.
But I didn't want to undersell it, not having sold a lot of Screaming Eagle in my life.
Absolutely.
You don't rarely see it. For people who don't know it, it's the cult Cabernet Sauvignon,
massively.
from Napa Valley.
It is.
And the 92 is what.
It's the flagship,
It's the
97
flagship,
Parker,
yeah.
owned by Stan Kroenke or Kroenke. No, it's marvellous for sure. I remember even seeing on a Wine Spectator article, albeit it was a charity auction, but there was I believe it may have even been a Jeroboam. It was a 6 litre
It's the
anyway.
most expensive wine ever sold,
Yeah,
isn't it?
$500,000
for a
crazy.
even for a charity auction. That's
a lot of money for one bottle.
Yeah.
It would have to taste good at that price, but all right, fair enough. But okay, so for yourself, personal preference, is there a particular vintage and brand that you would love to, aside from the Screaming Eagle 92, that you would love to get your hands on to have the pleasure of selling? So that's something you can say on your CV if you wish. Right, I've sold this. Like a Domaine de la Romney Conti 45 or Mouton 45 or Le Pan 82 or Cheval Blanc 47. Are there any of those that, not just those examples, but any others out there where you've always thought, right, I would love to be able to deal with that?
Well, actually, Cheval 47, I'd love to find a perfect case of Cheval 47. I don't think they exist, actually. I'm not convinced. I mean, that would be the holy grail, because you actually see 47 Cheval pops up quite a bit, not chateau bottled, normally merchant bottled, and they're never in particularly good condition. They're not as rare as people think, the 47 Cheval. It's something I'd love to try. I mean, that would be something quite, but I just don't. I think that just doesn't exist.
No.
I think. Where would you like to sort of really delve into? And we've got some 45s coming up in the next sale. I mean, that's a vintage that has that sort of romantic notion to the celebration of vintage. But I think actually you did say that Cheval 47. I think if I could find some of that
would be,
which is without question in great condition, people would with the right provenance, I think. When you talk about a bidding war, something like that.
That'll make all sorts of records. Yeah, definitely.
But whatever the domain, whatever the chateau have tucked away there will never. No. It'll never come out, and it'll be.
It's part of history.
Yeah, that's part of their history. I'd love to know how much they've got, if they do have.
Well, we never know. We never know.
I mean, that to me is the sort of iconic wine. It was meant to still be young now.
It is. It's meant to last still a good few years. You know, it's got big scores and big reputation. So we'll see. But all right. So of course,
and 1900 Margot. If you could find something.
Yeah,
that's the other one I'd love to try. Oh, these are sort of the classics, though, aren't they?
I remember. I think there was even an auction several years ago. Like Lafitte's directly from the cellars were selling off like 1870s and 1895s and whatnot. And but like I said, they're historic, and people would buy it from that standpoint. Yeah. You know, even like shipwrecked champagne and things like that. That'd
be quite fun. I mean, that's the beauty of auction. You know, those are the things that come your way that wouldn't necessarily go. No. You know, shipwrecked. You know, things that have been under the Barents Sea for however long, and
exactly.
And but they're actually talking about that. That's sort of going off tangent. I think Margaux and champagne houses, but I think Chateau Margaux, not only they are experimenting with screw caps.
That's true.
But they're also experimenting with aging their wine underwater.
Wow.
Yeah. Once it's in bottle.
That's
like
a bit
so it's absolutely constant temperature.
Wow.
Yeah.
That should be interesting.
I'll see before they put the labels on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it affects the provenance. But okay, in terms then of countries, we mentioned, of course, Southeast Asia, and obviously a number of your auctions held in Newbury, London, etc. What country, in your opinion, is leading the way in terms of buying up the prime lots of these ultra wines? And also, what's been the most surprising location of any recent buyers? And what I mean by that will be like a country, like winning bid was one in Brazil or in Mexico or...
Brazil is your first. We've been selling to Brazil, funny enough, which in recent auctions, in the last 3 auctions, we've had more and more clients coming from Brazil.
And sorry to interject, are they Brazilian? Again, this might be anonymous.
They're Brazilians, and
Wow.
they've been shipped out to Brazil. They're not keeping them here. They're getting. The US is always a massive market.
Yeah.
People forget about it.
Yeah, they do.
But it is. I mean, you know the US market well, but it is a huge market that, most. A lot of UK merchants don't do a huge amount with the US. Auction houses do.
Yes.
But they do, I don't think people realize. But the UK has always looked east rather than west.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that there's no trade between the UK and the US, but predominantly they've always looked east. I remember one very well known merchant, I think, he used a huge amount of business in America. We'll both know who they are, and their market dropped off in America, and they replaced it, and then never looked back with Macau, but didn't bother going back to America afterwards. They just kept their business in Macau.
Crazy.
Anyway, so the Americas, I think, there's lots of. Asia will always be interested in wine. I think China has been a more difficult market, I think, than it had been. I think people got their fingers burnt in the 2010 vintage Bordeaux.
Oh, massively.
And when there was a lot of cancelled orders. That part of the world, Singapore is a great market, but for everything, they have such an eclectic taste, and it's a much... The high taxes in places like Vietnam is just holding that back. That's not going to happen. Same with Australia, and they have their own wine. India, 300% tax, and they're making their own wine. They don't have the restaurant culture that it's just people can talk about. I bet that there's some very wealthy Indians with some wonderful sellers, but who knows how they... So the actual, none of the big countries, certainly and have made any real indents into the fine wine market. It is still Asia. When I say Asia, that's China, Hong Kong, Singapore. And then a lot of countries obviously will have multiple big buyers, but not enough to really sort of make a huge impact on things. But I think the US market is still king,
like Bordeaux, I think would always remain king.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Forget just how rich it is.
Yeah,
how rich and how wealthy Americans are.
And they love to spend it.
And they like to spend it.
Yeah.
It's all. So, and that's a market. We're doing more with America. So that it's and the UK is a good market. Yeah. It's a very good. London, still like to think is the centre of the fine wine trade in the world.
It certainly
people
is.
Might argue with that, but
sure.
and probably put up some pretty good reasons. But I think we're still there. I think we
are in terms of how we deliver it. I think we understand the culture a lot better.
Yeah.
The Americans are more. Even though they're into their wines, there's the beer, there's the bourbons, there's the whiskies. Southeast Asia is still sake, and it's still, other whiskies, Japanese whiskies, and whatever else. But we do it best. We've got that history of doing it best. But all right, some fun, quick fire questions, and then we'll have to wrap things up.
Brilliant. Okay.
So I'm going to give you individual regions, and you give one wine. You can even give a vintage year from that region that you'd love to drink before you kick the bucket. Not to be too grim, but But okay, so we're going to start off Bordeaux.
This is bucket list stuff.
Bucket list stuff.
Bucket. Well, where would we go?
Cheval 47?
Got to be that, isn't it? It's got to be Cheval 47.
Mousson 45 maybe, or?
I think it's going to be Cheval. I just want to... I want to taste Cheval 47 properly.
Good shout. All right. A region I know you love, Burgundy.
Yeah. Chablis. I love Chablis. Okay. Yeah, I just think that's my sort of go-to white.
Right. Great white as well. It is. Okay. Rhone.
Rhone. Oh, God.
Would it be a Guigal Lala? Would it be a Chateauneuf du Pape, or?
I don't know. A mature Chateauneuf, I think.
Yes.
Mature, but it's got to be mature.
Yes.
78s, those sort of vintage.
Oh, that's the go-to.
Yeah.
That is the go-to. Fair enough. You've got expensive taste there, but...
But in terms
or great taste, should I say. Great.
I like Côte Rhones. I mean, I like everyday Rhones. I think they're
beautiful.
You get a good one that's well made. I've recently started importing ones from Plan de Dieu, which is a sort of small vineyard in the Côte d'Rhône, and it's just real freshness to it.
Yeah.
Those sort of things. I think if you get the right vineyard in Côte d'Rhône, without some of them could be a bit bleh,
yes,
but
all right,
good grower, a bit like Burgundy.
Yes.
You get the right grower in the Rhône.
Yeah,
and they can do wonders.
Definitely. Champagne.
Not a massive champagne drinker. Okay. Best one I had the other day, well, not the other day, best one I've had recently, my brother bought it out, was Dom Rionart 98.
Wow.
And it is sensational. Well, it was sensational.
It was.
A couple of Christmases ago, I had that with my brother. Wow. And that was the most memorable champagne I've had for a long time. I'm not a great, it's quite soporific champagne for me.
All right, fair enough. Each their own. But, okay, and Tuscany.
Tuscany.
Or Piedmont, or Italy as a whole.
Piedmont, Scavino wines, I think, are fantastic. Tuscany, in terms of, I like Celaya actually. Celaya is a good.
It's a very good wine.
Yeah,
very good wine.
Yeah,
I
haven't had it much, but when
as a bucket list, what about Saskar 85?
I've had it, and it's really good. I mean, I had it when it was a quarter of the price. It was still very expensive. I had it. I went to a wine tasting at Christie's, a Saskar one many years ago, probably 20 years ago, and they were showing it then. And funny, it was one of those wines that I told people that 85 Sassicaia. It was one of my tips for people should buy it when they saw it.
Yes.
And I think I've been proved right. I don't know how much it is now. What is it? 10,000 for 6 or something like that?
No, you're looking a lot. You're looking a lot more. You're looking more. I would say 12 to 15,000, depending on country, location. Hedonism got it for nearer to £20,000, I believe. Hong Kong, you're looking £25,000.
Yeah,
and that's like a 6 to 12 bottles, and that's dependent on merchant and supplier as well. So it's a lot of money.
Yeah,
considering it probably cost only a couple £100 back then. So,
and I imagine you can probably, if you do your research, some of the recent vintages of Sassicaia, up there in they won't be far off that quality of 85 when they're probably
the 2016 actually. The Wine Advocate, it was given up 100 points to Monica
Lana.
They're
probably 1,200 quid a case now, something like that.
Yeah, they're really
like that. So actually, things to look out for are those
definitely.
I think they've broken through. We're going off, things like Sassicaia have broken through that into that market of a brand
massively,
and it's obviously a Bordeaux blend.
Yes,
but
they're very well recognised for sure. All right, so last couple of questions before we wrap things up. Then you've just finished a long, tough but successful day in the auction room.
Right.
What's your go-to food and wine pairing for that evening?
Go-to wine pairing. What would it be? God, what would it be?
I like nice.
Give me some inspiration.
If I go for like a decent, quite simple in that respect, but give me a decent steak and a decent bottle of a classic Bordeaux. I like a young Bordeaux. Like a 2015.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
2009, 2010.
Yeah, with you.
That and a steak, or even if I'm feeling a bit glamorous, a steak tartare. Yeah. Give me some chips.
It's got to be simple, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's got to be simple food.
For me, tough day in the office. Done what needs to be done. So, right, darling, can you please get some steak on, get the chips on, get maybe a nice salad. I'll bring home a bottle. Yeah, I don't know. For me, that's...
I'm sort of with you on that. I would have... I had one the other day. It's still my favourite food, which is grouse and burgundy. I think that's got to be it. That's the ultimate.
That's a very good pairing. A very good pairing.
That's probably me. I mean, it sounds very pretentious, but actually...
All right, edit my answer out. Nothing's going to top that, my word.
I just got it. It's good. I treat myself to one grouse a year.
Wow.
I could probably go stretch to 2, but I always think it might spoil my annual grouse.
It might do. So.
Anyway.
All right.
So that's probably...
And if you could give yourself younger advice, give your younger self advice rather, go back in time.
For wine, for in the wine
maybe
business.
just as a whole, maybe for a career perspective or
for wine. If I was telling someone going to the wine trade, it would be take as many notes as you possibly can, and listen and listen as much as you can to people. And I hear a lot of, and I may have been like this. I'm sure someone can tell me I was, but I meet some young wine merchants who think they know a lot about wine, and I certainly don't know a lot about wine. I know as much as I've learnt so far.
Sure.
God, it changes every minute.
Yes.
I think I think with anything in life, be really humble.
Agreed.
I know there's people who'd say, no, you want to be swaggy about. But I think, be humble.
Yes.
And life is just a little bit easier that way. I
love that.
Yeah.
No, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. And then lastly, if you were not involved in wine, full stop, you had nothing to do with wine, go back to when you was 10 years old and you didn't try any Talbot or Chateau Lafite, what career do you think you would be involved in? What career would you like to be involved in if you wouldn't?
I don't know. I have to say, I do sort of. I think I like. I'd quite like to have gone actually into the diplomatic corps. I don't think I would have got the results. I don't think I could have got the exams to do it. But it's something that I did think about. It was something that I thought about all the way through school. But I think I needed better. I'm not very good at exams.
Okay.
I worked hard, but I fell at the last hurdle.
You've done right for yourself.
Yeah, but it's been. I'm very pleased I went into the wine industry, and I think it does give you a lot of opportunities. Like everything, it has some major faults, but whatever career you go into it. But it's given me some really interesting opportunities. But I think you've got to be with wine. You've got to be entrepreneurial. And I'd like to be. I don't think I'm a natural entrepreneur in anywhere at all.
But who is? You learn as you go.
But I think if you're going into the wine business, you do need that a bit of an entrepreneurial flair to you.
Oh, definitely. No, that's good advice. That's great advice. No, so okay. Well, Mark, I'm gonna let you go and grab your Jeroboma 6.6 Latour, and good luck with the Screaming Eagle sale next time round.
Yeah, the next auction's in November, so I'll let you know what we've got, and
when they start accepting flights to Bordeaux, maybe that's when we can sample.
We'll do our first.
Definitely.
We don't need to do them first class, do we?
No, economy.
We should do. It might taste
exactly.
Better in first class.
We can have a podcast, for that as well. But we'll see. But thank you very much once again, and all the best for now.
Good stuff.